Very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Spectrum. We are coming to you live on Radio 1 FM 90, broadcasting from the Central Building here in the heart of the city, Kampala, but also live on our website, which is www.radio1fm90.com. You click on the icon with the word listen live. Radio 1 is also live on the different radio listening apps. Those you can obtain from the app store of your smartphone. You download, look for Radio 1 FM 90. And as long as you have an internet connection, you'll be able to listen to us from anywhere across the globe. Today, we'll be doing updates on the Protection of National Sovereignty Bill 2026. Now, earlier today, the opposition in Parliament fought off an attempt to have the bill, that is the Protection of National Sovereignty Bill, read for the second time on the floor of the House, which would be in total contradiction of the laid down procedure. Normally, a bill can only be read for the second time once the relevant committee has gathered views from the different stakeholders. Now, the second reading is also a precursor to the debate in the House before the third reading and the eventual passage of the bill. Now, having been read for the first time last week, the committee will officially begin collecting the views from the different stakeholders tomorrow. That's what we have heard. But what is so important in this bill? There are issues to do with protecting the sovereignty of Uganda from influence by foreigners. This includes recruiting, engaging, or partnering with Ugandans to influence public affairs. It also seeks to control external funding of different groups in the region of 100 million shillings and above. You have to get permission from the Minister of Internal Affairs in order for you to access that level of funding. The law has already been backed by the NRM Parliamentary Caucus, and it could easily sail through the House. The party has supported this position and the bill, and there's a write-up which was issued by their legal department. The opposition has rejected it. There are also other different stakeholders, including the Uganda Law Society, which has rejected it, saying that the country has adequate laws to deal with the concerns already being raised to justify this bill. If you look at this bill closely, it proposes some punishments if you're found in contravention. Jail term of 20 years or a fine of 2 billion shillings or both. So the debate is going on about this particular bill from different stakeholders. So today, I have once again different stakeholders here in studio to share their thoughts on this bill. Mr. Tumukunde Tonny, lawyer, NRM member and pundit on legal and governance matters. Tumukunde has been here before at the time this bill was proposed, but today he will be sharing with us insights about why they are backing this law as the legal department of the NRM party. He comes from the team of lawyers who work for this political party. We also have in studio Miss Patrina Atungire. She's a fourth-year law student at Makerere University, passionate about social justice, rule of law, and human rights. She's among those people who have come up with a position paper on this particular bill. Also in studio, Mr. Robert Okot, lawyer and political analyst. Good evening, gentlemen and ladies. It's a pleasure having you on this platform.
Good evening, Anderson. It's a pleasure having Okot and my sister. And I want to condole with the people of Kalangala for having lost their area MP. It's really bad at such a time when we needed her. She's just been just above the age of her youth and so useful.
Well, good evening, Anderson. Good evening to the listeners. I'm glad to be back on Spectrum. I also add my voice to Tonny Tumukunde's condolence with the Nope family, constituents of Kalangala, and the country at large.
Indeed, the country at large, because the honorable member was a national leader. Patrina?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Lukwago. Yes, my name is Atungire Patrina, and I'm a law student at Makerere University. I've also come to give my analysis of the Protection of Sovereignty Bill, and with the same regards, I want to add my voice also to my brother's voices to condone the loss of our sister. May her soul rest in eternal peace.
Amen. I want to begin with you, Mr. Okot, because this law has been treated by some sections, especially the opposition, as a political weapon, and at the center of that is their stiff, opposition to it. And they are saying they will do everything possible to try and knock it out. But there are also those who are saying we have adequate laws to deal with the issues that are being proposed. I want to begin with you as a political analyst. What you've heard from the different political stakeholders, including the NRM, which has come out to support this particular bill. What's your reading of the situation when it comes to this bill?
First of all, Anderson, when you look at the title of the bill, Protection of Sovereignty, we all love to be sovereign or to live in states that are sovereign. And when you look at the origin of the concept of sovereignty, of course, people that came up with that idea thought that states could live on their own, could be able to have their territories untampered with or without interference, and their people could be able to live without interference from foreigners. But with time, we've come to realize that sovereignty in that sense is not absolute. It's not easy to achieve that kind of sovereignty, which this bill is trying to come up with. But the challenge here with this bill is that we seem to be trying to legislate on things that are already legislated. And you see, whenever you're trying to come up with a law, you need to ensure that it is necessary. When you look at some of the objectives of the bill, they are talking about civil society, foreign funders or foreign agents. When you look at the current NGO Act, it already shows you that that sector is overly regulated. If you wanted to register today an NGO or any other kind of CSO, you would have to go through a lot of security checks, right from LC1, LC2, LC3, RDCs, DSOs, GSOs, ministries. So that kind of environment already shows you that they don't need another bottleneck in terms of performance of their duties as CSOs. Now, when you look at the other sector that will be hit again is the banking industry, because they're telling you that you have foreign agents, and those foreign agents include a number of people that use banks. When you look at again how our money flows here, most of our money flows through banks. But again, look at it. Most of our banks, apart from one or two, are owned by foreigners. Their money comes from foreign entities. You are going to find ourselves in a situation whereby banks are losing clients and banks will end up leaving the country. Yet they are some of the contributors to our tax base. So, in general, I would say that this bill is seeking a lot more control as opposed to legislation.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's go to Patrina. Patrina, what's your take about this bill initially, before your initial thoughts, before we even dig deeper into some of the arguments you put across? What's your thinking? What's your take?
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Lukwago. Now, at first, when I got a chance to see this bill, we actually were arguing about it in some group I'm not going to disclose. But as an open-minded person, I told them, guys, I think there is a reason as to why this bill was brought up by the cabinet. And I was privileged to get the brief which actually gives the justifications of the bill. So my take is, however much this bill is decorated in the bulwark of national self-determination, its framing lies a statute that is, first of all, constitutionally suspect. It is legally redundant, as Council has said. It is dangerously vague, and it is poorly benchmarked against the very international comparators that proponents invoke. When I looked at the brief, they were giving a comparative analysis with Rwanda's Agasiro. But really, this bill is not about promoting self-reliancy or self-determination or enlarging domestic economies. It is control of NGOs, it is control of civil spaces, it is control of civic spaces, it is silencing the civic society. It is capable, when you look at it, it is capable of criminalizing ordinary civic and domestic developmental work. So my take is it is really vague, redundant, and just dressed as an arm of self-determination.
All right, let's go to Tonny. Tonny, your party behind this particular bill, they also came out yesterday to try and explain. There was a document which was authored by the Director of Legal Affairs at the NRM Secretariat, who is Mr. Barata. I know as lawyers who come from the NRM, you from time to time work together on some of these issues. You've heard from your colleagues who are also lawyers on this table. We have also heard from a student of law who actually says this law is vague and unconstitutional, looking at how it is set up. Even your attempt to benchmark in Rwanda is what some people call a fallacy. Let's hear your take on this.
I don't want to really say we attempted to benchmark in Rwanda. I have no explicit evidence whatsoever. But one thing I need to tell you that first and foremost, I'm bound by the advice of the Attorney General that he has given in the new vision today. And it's explicit on what's wrong with the law. If he was a mean advisor to this government, he would not have told you the gaps that are within the law.
For the benefit of a listener who did not read the new vision.
Yes. The Attorney General says the law is good, but the law needs improvements on definitions in an orderly way. And he speaks about some of the things that need to be defined, like funding, what is really funding, financial assistance, grants, loans. But he also discusses the misconception that people have been having on as to whether the law is there to curb private transactions. Because I've heard on social media platforms people saying that if you have a relative working in the UK and is sending you money, then you are deemed, your relative will be deemed a foreigner, and you will be deemed an agent of a foreigner. And that is a fallacy. That is not true. The Attorney General actually has stated it. Those that need to, the law is there to only curb suspicious transactions. And a suspicious transaction, that is why the Attorney General has stated that we are going to define in the law. Remember, this is a bill. It's not yet law. And it's now upon our representatives in Parliament. I can give you, Anderson, a good example. This evening I've been listening to our representative debating about the value-added tax. They've done a very good job in actually putting down the increment of 150 million to 300 million. Why? They have given reasons. So it is time that our representatives look at these definitions in contemplation with other laws, because what the Attorney General or whoever is bringing this bill for the benefit of Ugandans is looking at other democracies. Some of other democracies are outrightly actually fighting what they call foreign interference. In the UK, for example, their Online Safety Act, their Political Parties, Elections and Referendum Act, you will not whatsoever be allowed by their security system to engage in what they call direct or indirect foreign interference. And that is what they are meaning. But in the UK, do you mean the people in the UK do not send money or do not receive money? They do. And so whoever is saying or is belittling the bill to the extent that a relative of a family will not even receive money for treatment, then is just shying away to telling people what is concrete within this bill.
So what's concrete? What's concrete?
What is concrete within this bill is that whereas we have the NGO Act, the Money Laundering Act, the Political Parties and Organizations Act, we must agree that most of these laws are 2005, 2006, when we did not have what we call foreign online interferences. And you would agree with me that most of the interferences now are not physical. Most of the interferences now are digital. And so there is a lacuna that we need to cure in there. But also you would agree with me that one could say, do we need a multiplication of laws or we could better the others? For me, I would want to disagree. We would have the Penal Code, but why did we have the Anti-Corruption Act? Sometimes to create even stricter penalties. In other countries like Singapore, the Singapore Foreign Interference Act, if you sat down and Singapore establishes that you have been directly interfering with their government policies and failing them, a country like Uganda, somebody wakes up, sponsors interference of government policy, even misdebates about the policy, and they go scot-free. That the NGO Act cannot cure. That the Anti-Money Laundering Act cannot cure. That the Penal Code cannot cure. Even the Computer Misuse Act, things like misinformation and malicious information have been now put down. The purpose of every government, you would agree with me, is to get power, retain power, and maintain power. How do you get power? Through laws that have been accepted by your representatives. So it is time that your representatives, if they are so good debaters, would reject, improve, amend these definitions. Then if you feel a clause is not better to the aspirations of people, then remove it.
All right.
But discarding the entire law would be dangerous.
All right. One particular issue I want to get clarification from you in line with what the Attorney General put out there. The issue of naming Ugandans residing abroad as foreigners. Is it also a fallacy? At what point does a Ugandan become a foreigner by virtue of looking at the provision in our current constitution?
You see, and those,
when do you lose citizenship?
Those are the flaws that the Attorney General is saying. It's still a bill. It's a drafts paper. So what should the MP do? That the Constitution gives you an outright benefit of being a Ugandan upon birth, upon registration, upon neutralization. So if the Constitution is giving you all those modes, and you clearly know that this law is contradicting the Constitution, our Article 2 on supremacy of the Constitution prevails. So as the member,
Attorney General would bring such a bill?
No, the Attorney General, the bill
goes through Cabinet, discussed, first Parliamentary Council,
you see,
all those levels.
And can it even pass that level?
Yes. You see, Okot will agree with me that bills have been passed and the Constitutional Court sees it. So you don't want to tell me that the Attorney General is outright.
All right. Let's
no, there are things that should really be basic, because really no bill can get...
And you see in that article, the Attorney General does not say that you waive your right of being a citizen.
All right.
No.
I'll come back to you.
He only defines,
no bill.
He only defines what we call registration, that every country you must, if you want to act on behalf of a foreigner, you should register to be an agent of the foreigner.
All right.
No government bill gets to be tabled before Parliament without the Attorney General looking at it. Yeah. So it is also a bit disingenuous and unfair from the Attorney General for him to start saying these things after the bill has passed through his hands.
Pointing out that these are the flaws.
Yes. Yeah. But getting back to his submission about Ugandans residing outside being regarded as non-Ugandans, foreigners. Yeah, the bill is very clear here in the interpretation section clause. A foreigner includes a Ugandan citizen residing outside Uganda. So even those kadamas you're talking about, would fit within this definition. Yeah. And they keep sending money to their people here. Yeah? But what is more painful about some of these clauses is that it disenfranchises or it denies these people of their citizenship. Yeah. So we start to see a state that is copying things from states that have been trying to have a lot more control over the citizenship, as opposed to allowing the citizenry enjoy as much freedoms as possible within their constitutional rights.
All right, let's go to Patrina. Patrina, reading from this discussion that we are having, from your paper there, your analysis, what are some of the things you totally disagree with in this bill?
Now, first of all, I vehemently disagree with the definition of a foreigner, including a Ugandan citizen who is residing outside Uganda. I don't know what the framers' intentions were to include Ugandan citizens who are abroad, naming them foreigners. And secondly, I find that the bill is inadequate in definitions. When you look at it, there is a lot of interests of foreigners, the interest of foreigners, the interest of foreigners. What are the interests of the foreigner we are talking about? The bill does not also define that. So we will find that leaving it this broad and ambiguous, people will be captured to fit in this box of interests of foreigners. And when you also look at Council Tonny's submission that this bill is actually trying to fill the legal and policy gap. To me, a bill that is filling policy gaps or legal gaps would look like one that is identifying specific failures in existing enforcement and address them with targeted amendments. This one is not a gap-filling bill. It is rather a regulatory capture that is dressed as reform. Yes.
All right. So if from your opinion, there's nothing good at all in this particular bill. How about the argument that NGOs need to be monitored, how they spend money that they receive from abroad? That's an argument that has also been put across.
Yes, I've also said that. But in my own opinion, I'm entirely against this bill. Like, yes, we are all patriotic, and it itself, it's dressed in patriotism, self-determination, sovereignty, and all that. But what is the intention of the government saying that they would want to look into the funds of NGOs? In their brief themselves, they stated that 40% of our budget is funded by foreigners. So what is the difference between the funding of the government and the funding of NGOs? If we are to look for transparency, I believe there are other solutions we could do other than skyrocketing the control of the executive.
Tonny, well, you've heard the arguments that have been put across. Should I say to water down your spirited submission?
It's important to understand that foreign funding does not directly mean foreign direct investment.
Maybe you need to also help us understand foreign interest, yes, like she has stated. Foreign funding.
Every country.
What entails?
Anderson, and to the listeners, every country's aim is to protect its citizens.
Agreed.
The aspirations of its citizens. And for me, the law is not bad in its entirety, like what the activists and other debaters, social debaters have said. But we need to improve on terms. Okot has stated here, if there is a problem with the definition of a foreigner, then you have the representative Okot. Let the representative define, and you see, that is why even the Attorney General today, in his excerpt, he has stated that whereas there are flaws in the law, it is just a bill, and it's the good thing that the representatives will discuss it before it's passed into a law. So let us discuss, and the best method, a democracy encourages discussion and debate. So other countries would wake up and say, even though we have had these governments that even never discussed such laws.
You know, we don't need to go that side.
We don't need to go that.
Give that example.
We don't need to go that side. But I'm telling you that Uganda is a democracy, and there is space for debate, and space for debate is in Parliament through our representatives.
No, actually, we are also debating.
Can we then narrow down to better terms the definition of a foreigner? And if you're excluding the citizenry of a Ugandan, then that would be bad. The constitution must prevail, because as I've told you, somebody could work abroad, but is the born of Uganda. He's a Ugandan. So crossing over the borders, can you not then define them as foreigners? But also, what is capricious about what people are stating is that they do not want to accept that there are detriments with foreign interference against Ugandan government policies or national policies.
All right, let's go for a break now. When we return, we will ask you to explain deeper the dangers you think we face as a country in terms of foreign interference. Have we seen it? Has there been an attempt?
Yes, we have.
And then we'll see whether we need this kind of law and whether there are no other laws in place that can deal with this kind of situation. Stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90, because Spectrum will continue after this break. Well, we're glad that you're still with us on Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90. We are following up updates on the National Sovereignty Protection Bill. Views of the public will begin being gathered tomorrow by a joint committee, that is the Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, plus the Committee on Defense and Internal Affairs. They'll be sitting in Parliament, where members of the public are encouraged to take their memoranda, but you must submit first in writing before you're actually invited to go and submit your views. So there is also a control measure. Probably they will look and say, Tonny, what could be going on? You have a panel of 3 people. Mr. Tonny Tumukunde is a lawyer, NRM member, is a pundit on legal and governance matters. Ms. Patrina Atungire, she's a 4th-year law student at Makerere University, and Mr. Robert Okot, lawyer and political analyst. Now, very quickly before we go around, Tonny, at what point do we, start arguing that there are foreigners who are interfering with our affairs in what we would call a global village? Because almost what happens elsewhere affects us, and going by the definition that our court gave us from the start, the sovereignty that is defined in this bill ceased to exist a long time ago. So at what point are foreigners interfering in our affairs when even we rely on them to finance our national budget? This week, last week, and I think up to now, our Ministry of Finance, they're still with the World Bank in the US, New York. They are looking for funds to do projects and things like that. Is it not contradictory that our government is relying on foreign funding and it's trying to discourage others from getting the money that would also help the Ugandan sector? You know how many people the NGO sector employs. You know the transactions they engage in. They buy cars, they do printing, and all this manner of things. It will affect the economy.
But you'd also agree with me that it is this very government, through its Financial Intelligence Directive, that moved all NGOs from the grey list. So you will never see anyone in the NGO world being arrested for a lot of monies that they receive.
They didn't move the NGO, they moved the country from the grey list. It's always about
the country, but also NGOs now. You're not
NGOs
so much
answerable.
Yes, you're not so much answerable to the big amount or humongous amounts of money that you do receive. But
you see, as you're removing the country from the grey list, you are imposing it here internally.
And I'm coming to that. The finance minister and all the officials being in Washington to get foreign assistance. Now that is lawful assistance. And according to the act is not barring any lawful funding. For example, I've heard people say academic grants, academic loans will be defeated because they will be taken to be foreign funding. No. What is only covered under the sovereignty bill is what we call suspicious, coercive, violent, threatening funding. And every country actually does that. I'll give you an example. The US gets funds from China. It has actually, China is the biggest financial of most of the projects in the US. They don't want to accept that. But also, US sieves the finances and the financial interference of China, whether China or Russia. But also I want to tell you this. Most of the people are saying we have the NGO Act. So what protects that one individual who is not an NGO from being influenced to downpower the policies of government? If I am one individual, I'm not an NGO, I'm not a political party, what law will penalize me if I downsized, powered, misinformed people on government policy?
Misinforming?
Yes, that is and distorting government policy.
When somebody seems to misinform or distort, you come and clarify.
You see,
you state the right position.
You see,
you don't enact a law specifically for that, do you?
Okay, fighting and defeating, because when you want to be sovereign, and if you are a citizen of this government, the policies that are drawn by this government and passed by parliament, by your own representatives, that policy must be respected by a citizen world over, in every democracy that we yearn to live in. For me, the point is not only looking at what the NGOs should not do, because the law is sufficient on that.
All right. So have you seen any level of interference? Has there been any interference? Something that could have triggered? You will not
want to accept and agree with me on this show, but there are security reports that there has been interference in our elections, and in every country, you would agree with me that interference in elections is one of the modes of foreign interference. And the president has come up and said there are groups that have been funded by outside people or foreigners to burn down cities, yes, to distort the elections, to the extent that some of the people have been arrested with ammunition-like gadgets. I want to state that. But also, there are some people that have been arrested for issuing results of elections. Why? Because the benefit of the outside people is that you must destabilize the country so that the government goes. But also, you would not, in security, you would not wait for a country to burn down. You would not wait for a country to go down the Tatars before you start fighting. That's not the method of security, and no country would accept that.
All right.
So if security comes up and it brings a law and it brings a policy, let the members debate it,
all right,
and then discuss it and put it out there. If the law is taken up by, unfortunately or fortunately, we have what we call representative governance. So let our members of parliament come up, discuss it, debate it. If it is within the whims and aspirations of the people, then your members would vote on it.
All right. Okot, very quickly, you're a political analyst. The opposition have been saying that this is a political tool, and going by the explanation given by Mr. Tumukunde here about interference, including people who attempted to allegedly interfere with our elections, because he cites security reports. I've not seen any, neither have you, so I would say allegedly. What's your take? Could this be more about our internal politics, covered in so many other things?
Anderson, I would like to remind us about 10/11, the bombings in the US, and what the Bush administration then came up with, looking at certain communities as a security threat, which some legal scholars have now looked at as the securitization theory. So in that securitization theory, you start to see certain sectors of society or certain segments of society as a threat to the security of the country, even when they may not be a threat. So what we are seeing here now, and you can clearly see from the bill is being given, oversight is given to the Ministry of Internal Affairs. You even now going to have a department on peace and security. That is clearly showing you that whatever is being proposed to be legislated here is being looked at from the perspective of a security threat. So certain things that come in here, like civil society, other industries that we are looking at that are going to be affected
even
here.
With the media, we are there.
Yes, because media is part of civil society.
Not only that, they actually say that if you publish information that is likely to affect, to jeopardize the economic opportunities of the country's interests of the country, you can be held as somebody who is engaged in sabotage.
Exactly. So this is again a deeper securitization of the Ugandan society, But why should we get to that level? Yeah, if we are sure that Ugandans went and voted us on 15th January overwhelmingly, why should we look at Ugandans as a security threat?
So you think this is about the previous elections?
I would think so, but also, Anderson, you need to realize that there is a certain sector or a certain group within the current administration that feels that maybe this company called Uganda needs to be run like other companies in Europe, the likes of Russia or the likes of North Korea. Yeah. So we need to be very careful as the likes of Tonny Tumukunde promote this bill,
right,
because we might soon be victims.
In that group of people who want to see a sole proprietorship. All right, let's go to Patrina. Patrina, your closing arguments on this particular bill before we hear from the listener. You've heard from your colleagues issues of interference, foreigners interfering with our elections as submitted by Mr. Tumukunde, and also the rejoinder made by Council Okot.
Yes. What Council Tonny has said was also alleged in the government's brief. They said that foreign aid with conditions threatens policy autonomy. But in my opinion, this bill is actually treating or attempting to treat a symptom, which is foreign influence on civil society, and leaving the structural cause, which is aid dependency, entirely untouched. Like I said before, they also agreed that approximately 40% of our budget is funded by foreigners. So if we are arguing about the bill, about its interference, about the interference of foreign aid with policy autonomy or self-determination of Uganda, isn't this bill exposing fundamental contradiction at the bill's heart? Because if Uganda is genuinely 40% aid dependent, then this legislation that criminalizes the receipt of foreign funding by civil society organizations that often actually delivers the services that aid finances, will not reduce that dependency. So to me, the solution would be that to aid dependence is domestic. It would be resource mobilization and actually improving of tax administration and the strategic reduction of the aid relationship, all of which require sustained political will of a kind that no criminal statute can substitute for.
Tumukunde argues and says that the money that the government is getting for budget support and all the things is lawful, as opposed maybe to what the NGOs receive. What would be your response? You actually heard him say so. There is lawful money and the money that is not lawful. That's
not my point. Actually, before Patrina comes in, before Patrina comes in,
all right, very quickly.
I want to assure Patrina that her submission is flawed. Why? Because the law or the bill as is, seeking to be the law, is not curbing what we call foreign funding, but is curbing what that foreign funding that is interfering the policies of government. So I want to be clear that health, gender, justice, democracy, so long as it is well intended, because people are scared that, you see, the health sector is going to die, employment is going to reduce, the revenue tax base is going to reduce. The government is well aware that when we have a 78 trillion budget, we have some funding that comes from our foreign state partners, and we have NGOs that are advancing health, protecting children, running with church in their missions. That is not actually bad in the law, but any funding that destabilizes government policy, and that's why the Attorney General has been honest enough in his excerpt today in the New Vision and said, we need to define the parameters of when does funding become suspicious.
Okay.
Yes.
Okot, very quickly, before we hear
I just wanted to tell Tonny that, you see, when we talk about foreign funding and influencing our policies here, you see, government could be the first culprit itself. Because you see, when you go to Brussels...
You said the money that the government gets is lawful.
Yes, we are just trying to say that...
So you can submit within that context.
It is double standards. Because you see, when Uganda goes to Brussels or Washington to beg for money, yeah, they will be trying to fit within the foreign policy of America or the foreign policy of Europe.
The money comes with strings attached.
With strings attached. So you can't now again say that because it is now civil society or any other person receiving that money, yeah, but doing the same things that government does with the same money is now acting in the interests of, is now promoting foreign interests.
All right.
And that is why you people that are in mainstream NRM should be advocating for a law that will not come back to bite us. You run a private practice, and I'm sure you have some foreign clients. You might soon be a victim of the same law if passed. Yeah? So, in whatever we do, you see, when POMA was being passed, yeah, the chief campaigner of POMA was one of the first victims of POMA. Yeah? And these things have been happening before. Right. So our members of parliament need to be very careful as they get into this kind of confusion.
All right.
Because you see, Anderson, look at the time frame given for consultations. What is the rush? Eh? Soon we have a few days for the public to send in their views. But you also need to question whether this so-called public participation is actually genuine. Is it just to tick boxes to avoid a constitutional petition in the near future? Yeah. So
they are rushing it. That's what you think.
They are rushing it, and in my thinking, it is not brought in good faith, but it will have very serious consequences for the wider public, because you're going to have the international community continuing to isolate Uganda from its development programs, yet we have already been hit by a number of restrictions. Right now, we are not beneficiaries of the AGOA program, largely because of some of the laws we passed here. Yeah?
All right.
We have government officials, a good number of them, under sanctions, either by Europe or Britain or the United States of America. And that does not augur well with our reputation as a country within the global community.
All right.
And Anderson, shortly.
All right.
Shortly, one, what is the best sovereignty if the bill is saying that one of the best government policies of the NRM government is to fight corruption? You would agree with me, you would disagree with me. And if we are looking at people that are stealing monies,
you are disagreeing with yourself the way you are laughing. So disagree with
no, I'm just laughing at the way you're opening your eyes. Where you're just surprised that we strongly fight corruption. But you would agree with me that we have people in this government, we have people in local government that steal monies and go outside and buy buildings. Are you not fighting government
Those
policy?
can still be regulated within the current framework. You don't have to bring a law that can be misused by government officials.
Now, Okot, you would agree with me that your submission also can be watered down. One, he stated that we are getting as government funding that has stringent strings attached. You have seen a blue letter from the president where a lot of money has been actually. The president.
Unfortunately, I don't see blue letters.
Because you're used to red letters.
All right. I message you, Tumukunde. We need to go to the views of the people. If you can, sort of summarize your point.
So, the president has told us that where we have reached, we can finance our budget at 70% without loans that are stringently attached. And the president has written down and told Minister of Finance not to get such loans. We have had loans where they give us strings attached. The president has actually downpowered that. And you would agree with me, the next show we come here, I will come with a letter where the president has actually objected to over 7 financing options where a lot of strings were attached from these countries.
All right, let's go to the lifeline of this show, and those are the comments that are coming in from the listeners. What do they make of the discussion that we've had here in studio about the national sovereignty bill that is now being, entertained in Parliament? Number one, our MPs majority NRM will pass whatever bill is brought forward by the government, not because they want it, but because they are focused to pass them. Recently, they got their hands oiled with 100 million. Naturally, they are compelled to pass whatever comes, but deep down, we all know it's a terrible bill. That's Ham listening in from Entebbe. Good evening, Kenneth, and I guess the bill will not work because it's squeezing everyone in the country. That's Grace Kabanda there with that comment. Okelo Patrick Bonyo listening in from Rusega. Napoleon is always right, and I believe he cares for this country. That's a comment coming to you, Tony. Good evening, Anderson. Geoffrey Abil listening in from Lira City. The problem with the current regime is simply power retention. The issue of controlling remittances from abroad is simply to kill the energy from NGOs that help to educate Ugandans on their rights. Honorable Chiriowa Chiwanuka would reason well before he became Attorney General, but now he has gone to the shoes of the late Attorney General Peter Nyombi. God should help Uganda. Ken, thanks for the show. My concern is that the NRM man, like the AG present, the Attorney General currently, argues in justification for the bill. They don't tell us what the bill is curing. E.g., they talk of foreign interference. Can they give us one example? Unfortunately, they're all lawyers. This is James listening in from Entebbe. The NGOs also fill the gaps in service provision that the government has failed to provide. And who defines what the suspicious and coercive funding that the law is talking about? We have another comment. Good evening, Anderson. Thanks for the show. I think where we have reached as a country, we are no longer a democratic country, but rather authoritarian, where citizens' rights are decided by the regime, not the constitution. That's why they are coming up with such ridiculous laws. Lastly, let the NRM lawyer tell me which constitution are they using. Otherwise, they have violated and abused the 1995 constitution. They have become disgrace to Ugandans. That's Jimmy listening in from Mukono. Good evening, Radio 1. Owen Akandwa now listening in from Che Mabugonji. Thank you so much. As earlier submitted, the problem with our MPs is they don't read at all. Even the few that read and understand, when they tell others who have no time of looking in the papers, they simply don't care because they are all satisfied already. In Runyankore, we call it being kwatirechi. Then we have Okelo Gabriel listening in from Yumbe. Thank you for the panelists and the discussion. However, I would like to strongly express my concern about the proposed sovereignty bill. While protecting national independence is important, any law that limits fundamental freedoms, weakens accountability, isolates Uganda from the international community, or suppresses democratic voices should be rejected. The sovereignty should empower citizens, strengthen institutions, uphold human rights, and promote development, not to create fear or close civic space. Uganda needs laws that unite people, attract investment, and defend justice. Well, those are the comments that we're getting in from the listeners. Very quickly, in a few seconds, your closing remarks before we get out of this studio. Very quickly, in a few seconds.
Thank you, Anderson. As the government of Uganda, the NRM government, we shall protect the people with their lives, property, and sovereignty. Those are my closing remarks.
Okot? In a few seconds?
I would say that what this bill does is to promote a securitized governance model, which is not really pro-people or pro-civic freedoms. But again, what we need to be careful about is the isolation of ourselves from the global community.
All right, very quickly, Patrina, in a few seconds.
Yes, mine is the sovereignty, as properly understood, belongs to the power of the people of Uganda, as declared under Article 1. So the legislation that restricts their freedoms is not protection, but rather a paradox.
All right. We shall continue to entertain views on this particular table about this particular bill, looking at a number of people will be coming out. But up next, the news in English with Miss Josephine Dagano. Thereafter, great songs and great memories as BB Jr. does The Soul Train.